All right. Well, they got a chance to see a baseball game last night. It was suspended at Fenway Park because of rain. The game will resume August 26th, which means the Jays be nice and rested tonight for the first of 4 against the New York Yankees. It is Blair and Barker. Ross Atkins, Executive Vice President and General Manager of the Blue Jays, joins us in a few minutes. Shi Davidi, Jeff Passan will be along as well. We've got a chance to win Jays tickets to see the Jays and the Houston Astros at the Rogers Center. We just heard Ross Atkins did his availability to the rest of the media at the Rogers Center, Kevin, and a lot was said, but my big takeaway is this would be a good time to win 3 or 4 games from the Yankees or sweep the series, because I really got the sense that Ross said was very careful not to go where I think most fans went about a month ago. Mm-hmm. But it's pretty clear that we have reached a point here where the 2024 season takes a backseat to 2025.
Yeah, I think that's one really, really good takeaway. The one that I sort of took away was it seemed like what they were banking on in the offseason of working is not working, and now they don't know how to fix it. Like it's either
you may not be able to fix it.
I think that's the point, right? I think Ross even sort of, in so many words, kind of said that just the resources and how they're going to pivot to figure out how to not only compete the rest of the season, but also gain some momentum going into the offseason. So, yeah, it's just, we've said this and we'll continue to say it. When you trade away 3 everyday players and you don't really fill in the blanks for the 3 everyday players, this is sort of what's going to happen here. And again, I think they've come to the realization, too, that run preventing back-to-back years is very, 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 very hard to do. And every once in a while, your offense is going to have to thump people for a month, and right now it's just not getting it done. So I think there's a lot of head-scratching and trying to figure out why it's not working behind closed doors, and I'm not real sure Ross or anybody else has got answers right now.
No, and, as far as we know, as of now, they're still the people that are going to be charged with the responsibility of coming up with those answers. Tonight's pitching matchup, it is a 7:07 first pitch. Jose Barrios against Carlos Rodon. Now, the Yankees, and I don't quite know how this happened, watched it. I mean, they've lost 3 in a row. They've won only 2 of their last 10. Now, their run differential, the run differential compared to the Blue Jays is plus 150 some. So it's not panic in River City yet. But, the Yankees are a game up in the Orioles. I mentioned they've only won 2 of their last 10 games. They're still 14.5 up in the Jays. The Jays are 6.5 back in the wild card.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's ever a good time necessarily to get the Yankees, Kevin Barker, but the bottom of the order has had issues for the Yankees.
Absolutely.
Gleyber Torres been benched. Garrett Cole.
Seems that way.
Garrett Cole, Sunday's scheduled starter, coming off the type of outing where I would think the Yankees want to be.
I think, than performance.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's wondering why it's 91. That for me,
and the Yankees will keep an eye on us. So
Even
that doesn't mean it's going to be a stroll in the park.
Yeah,
by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, no, they got to continue to do things. I think 1 through 9. It's like that 3rd inning they had a couple of days ago. That's sort of what they need to do, right? Can they do it 3 or 4 days in a row? That's the thing. And you got to think the rotation that you're going to run out there for the most part is going to give you at least a chance for you to have that sort of 3rd kind of inning. It's just, can every guy walk up and have that team at bat, right? It's be you. If the defender's back and the guy just got on first base, it's okay to try and get a bunt single, try and put a little pressure on the defense. It's quite frankly on the infield for the New York Yankees is not always the best of defenses. So, yeah, I think that's, again, and you can sort of hear that from Ross a little bit earlier, just about can they do it? Can they consistently try and, go 8-2 in the next 10 by having consistency of the 3rd inning that we saw a couple days ago? And it's a giant unknown. I mean, they're running into the Yankees, like you mentioned. Vladdy's smoking hot, and they're not scoring runs at the bottom of the lineup, and they've lost 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10.
I mean, there you go.
The Jays lineup is out. Bo Bichette is leading off.
That's been working.
Bo Bichette's leading off. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa is hitting second. Vladdy's third. Justin Turner's in the fourth spot. George Springer hit a home run the last time. He's back in the fifth spot.
That's a lefty throw, too. You got to remember this now.
Why not? Why not? Davis Schneider in left field. Dalton Varsho is back in the lineup in center field. Alejandro Kirk is behind the plate. Ernie Clement.
Hey.
Ernie Clement has been given a day pass.
Welcome back.
Ernie Clement is in the lineup tonight for the Toronto Blue Jays. And Jose Barrios. Jose Barrios is on the mound for the Blue Jays tonight. Again, a 7:07 first pitch against the Yankees. The pitching matchups for the rest of the series Friday, Marcus Stroman. I'm going to give myself a pat in the back here. Because going into spring training, I wrote a little article for Sportsnet.ca, and I said that I thought Marcus Stroman signing by the Yankees was going to be low-key one of the best offseason moves by any team this year. I think he's perfect for the Yankees. He's 7-3. He's got an ERA of 3.15. I think Marcus Stroman's going to thrive there. I really do. He starts Friday against Yusei Kikuchi. Nasty Nestor Cortez goes on Saturday against Chris Bassett. That'll be some serious funk in that game. Like, you got Nestor Cortez doing all his tricks. You got Chris Bassett. You know, that's going to be like two magicians. That's going to be like two magicians having a magician off, right? Yeah, you're going to pull that rabbit out of your hat. Look what I've got here. Yeah. That'll be a lot of fun.
I can't wait to see Vladdy against the lefties. Can the plate awareness not be a thing anymore? Yeah. Right? Don't chase the ball in.
And we mentioned Garrett Cole against Kevin Gossman on Sunday.
Yeah, there's
so I mean, if you're the Jays,
on the mounds,
if you're the Jays, you've got your guys. Absolutely. You've got your guys lined up. Yariel Rodriguez again last night. The game was suspended in the second inning.
Sooner or later, you got those strikes, don't you?
I mean, come on, that was an inning and you're reacting to it. What, an inning? You saw an inning of it.
Yeah, but it's
better than that.
It's what I saw the inning before that he had.
Okay.
And then it sort of just carried over to the inning last night where I know he only threw 15 pitches and what was it, 8 or 9 strikes, but it's the batters, it's the 1-0, 2-0 counts. Like, sooner or later you got to attack, man. If you don't attack, you ain't gonna be much of a big leaguer. I think that's sort of where they're at with him. And where do they go? I think they're just going to continue to run him out there and let him figure out they're 600 or 700, 500, and listening to Ross doesn't seem like they're going to go out and add a bunch of things. So you would think what you're going to have going into next year, you need to figure out where they're going to sort of fit in. What better way to do that than run him out there every 5 days?
I mean, I got a better way, but you don't want to hear it. So.
I don't want to hear it. It's nonsense. Just because you can send a guy down don't mean you should.
Sometimes it does, yes. Sometimes it does.
Who would he benefit more? AAA or with, in my mind, the best pitching coach in baseball?
Well, if he can make it out of the third inning with the best pitching coach in baseball, that would be swell.
You would almost think it's more about next year.
If it's going to be, it's going to be. The guy's got to get built up. I mean, he hasn't pitched for a while. I'd rather, if it's me. I'd rather have Bowden Francis starting. I'd rather have Yariel down in AAA.
Old Jeff Blair still
6 starts, 6 innings to start, 7 innings.
You're still in win mode, thinking you can win the American League East and running the best guy out there.
Not in win mode.
Sometimes it's about your future and seeing what you got and seeing if a guy can figure it out on the fly.
I want the guy ready for next year.
Yeah, that's how you do it. Go down and pitch against guys that, quite frankly, ain't as good as he is. You can go down there and afford to walk 5 guys, and your ERA still look the way it's supposed to look. No, you can't do that here. How does he get around walking 5 guys? Let's see it. I mean, why are you protecting him for?
Not protecting him.
You are.
I want him to pitch.
Yeah, pitch in the big leagues. You paid him all that money. Let him come up here and figure it out.
Well, anyhow.
There you go.
He's going to end up in the bullpen probably this year. I just don't have any. I don't have the. You know, listen. I know that.
It's like a Relvis Martinez in his defense.
No.
Whoa.
Oh yeah. I'm so wrong about that.
Yeah, it's one. It's one play.
Run prevention's worked so well. It's just worked so well this year. It's all been a laugh riot thanks to run prevention. And, now and even Ross Atkins said today, he mentioned basically we got worse defensively because we needed to do something offensively. And, my argument would be that's not a good sign when the guys you're bringing up from the minors can't play a position. It's generally not a good sign. But anyhow, we got a lot to talk about.
That's a strong word.
On a winning team? No, that's the exact word.
Well, there's a bunch of guys on this team that on a winning team may not be on the team.
There is nobody on this team, or very few guys in this team, whose defense you wouldn't take in a winning team. There really isn't. You take anybody in that outfield, you take their defense in a winning team.
Mm-hmm.
think you take Spencer Horwitz at second base on a winning
I like
team?
Vladdy.
Vladdy
Bo
too.
Bichette's okay.
Yeah, that's my point. Is Spencer Horwitz going to start at second base on a good team?
You can't have
Addison Barger going to be in the outfield in a good
outstanding
team?
defenders.
You can have 9 good
right
defenders. You can have 9 average or above average defenders. This is silly. And I get me all worked up before Ross comes on.
I did it on purpose.
I know you did that on purpose.
Accessibility.
There you go.
There you go. Accessibility. Did you see that?
I did.
He
I heard it.
froze my computer.
Yeah.
Son of a. Shi Davidi will join us at the top of the hour. Jeff Passan will be along. He has taken a look at the top additions for contenders at the trade deadline. It is that time of year, folks.
It is ready.
Hot rumor out of Houston yesterday that the Astros are zeroing in on Vladdy. My guess is that there are probably 15 to 16 teams zeroing in on Vladdy.
You know what you would start with? The dude playing right.
Yeah, and I don't think
Straight
they
up.
would, I don't think they would make that deal.
I don't either.
I mean, you're
That
trading,
makes zero sense.
I don't think they would.
I don't
think they would
either.
make that
So it
deal.
ain't going to work. Why would you do it?
I mean that's I still think that the trading Vladdy stuff and the Bo stuff, I still think that's a conversation for the offseason. But I mean, the hell. As I've said, I have my reading of this front office generally is a little bit like a George Springer at bat.
Ooh.
Looking at the wrong stuff and missing at the other
That'd
stuff.
be nice. Man.
Well,
All it took for me to say run prevention and
no, you
got you all twisted up nuts.
You just poked the bear.
Man.
I didn't appreciate it.
Well, let's be nice when Ross comes on now.
The Yankees. Did you? How much of that series, the Subway Series, did you watch?
Enough.
It was. You know what was really weird is, and this is not something that I just stumbled on because I'm so incredibly insightful. But if you read a lot of the New York papers or a lot of the websites and all that, you really get the sense that the Mets think that's saved their season. That's turned it around, and that they're good to go now.
Well, they always talk about forcing the front office to do something. Is it too early? I mean, you got to continue to do this, right?
Well,
like I don't know. They're at 500. Is that good enough to, you hear Lindor coming out and saying everybody's got each other's backs, and I just think they're starting to hit more.
They're at 500.
That's what I think.
They're 13 back of the Phillies. They're not catching the Phillies, but they're a game and a half out of the wild card. And they've got a positive run differential. And you look at the teams, the teams that are going to be in the wild card race. I just know if I'm who scares you if you're the Mets? San Diego, Arizona.
The beauty
St.
of
Louis.
this is if you screw this up by trading the wrong people, you got an owner who's got $1 bazillion. You can make up for it. So what difference it make?
Yeah, that is the people talk about payrolls and that. The best thing about having an owner with a ton of money is he can cover your ass when you make a mistake.
Absolutely. If you mess it up so much, that guy's got so much.
It's like, really, you did that? Okay, how much do I have to write to write that off? There's a check. Go get somebody else.
I mean, the owner does want to win. It seems like he's a solid owner when it just comes to reading the room. I think that's sort of what you're trying to get there, right?
Yeah. And but it was really I mean, Shea Stadium. Boy, show your age, Jeff. Citi Field was a really cool environment. The Mets stepped up, man. The Mets, as players, the whole organization stepped up. They really turned it into.
Absolutely.
They really turned it into it was a happening.
Jeff,
it was fun.
It is a marathon of a season, not a sprint, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of that best team in the American League. It like changes every other day.
Yeah.
And I still think
fair.
the Yankees are
point.
really good, and you could argue that, and you could argue the Orioles, but boy, they're going through it, right?
And
I mean, now you could say the Guardians or the Astros. Like you could throw the Twins are starting to win.
The Guardian run differential isn't everything, but it's a lot of things.
Yeah.
The Guardians' run differential is plus 105. I mean, it's 5 behind the Orioles. I think we're at the point where I think we got to stop looking at the Guardians as kind of pixie dust right now. I think the Guardians are a really good team. They play a good brand of baseball. They've got pitching, and they've got that. I mean, they've got that bullpen.
Yeah, it's basically a high school game, right? You turn it over to a pen in the 6th or 7th inning, and it's basically almost over. It's just, can you continue to do that? Will they add a piece or two? That's the question, too, maybe.
Yeah.
Can
they are well.
Can
they
you
are well positioned
situational
to
hit
do that.
enough to have the two behemoths in the middle of the order come up and run into one? And can you go to Yankee Stadium? Can you go to Minute Maid? Like, can you go on the road and have enough just it's me against you and win those games? We'll see.
This is really remarkable. I just noticed this. I mean, I've told you about what I think about the standings in general. I mean, they've got an 8-game lead. The Dodgers have an 8.5-game lead over San Diego, which is the most of any division. Mm-hmm. The Phillies have an 8-game lead over the Braves. The Guardians have an 8-game lead over Minnesota.
Yeah. You take Jose Ramirez out of the Guardians lineup, like the Dodgers have lost Mookie Betts.
Take Aaron Judge out of the Yankees.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing, right? So, yeah.
As we mentioned, 7:07 will be the first pitch tonight at the Rogers Center. The Jays taking on the New York Yankees, the first of 4 games between these teams. Ross Atkins is Executive Vice President and General Manager of the Blue Jays. He joins us on Blair and Barker. Ross, thanks so much for doing this. Thank you for taking time out to talk to us today ahead of, I think what we all agree is going to be a fairly consequential series against the Yankees. Look, this team's probably going to win less games this year than it did last year, which was less than the year before. You've professed faith in the process and the coaches, all during the offseason and now. But I think for a lot of us, it's hard not to come away from this thinking either the process and the people responsible have failed or the players just aren't good enough. Which is it? And if it is a systemic thing, if it gets back to the process, can we expect this front office to correct it?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Good to hear your voices. Good to be here. It is a big series. Every game is big. In the world of baseball, I think the importance of each day is something that is something to balance constantly, and not to put too much emphasis on one game or one series, and treating them all with incredible urgency. So, and as it relates to your question, we acknowledge and understand the frustration that you have, that fans have, that your listeners have, and we share it. We have worked tirelessly to correct it, and all of our energy and effort is focused on that. And changes, as it relates to changes, whether it be personnel, players, front office, all of those things, we fall back on the same things, not creating change just to have something different or new, but constantly thinking about improvement and getting better. And as it relates to this environment and team, there has been significant turnover over the 6 years or so that a lot of these players have been here, or certainly for 4. And they have experienced change. They have experienced different leaders. They've experienced different hitting influences. They've experienced different offensive processes that you have to adjust to each year, to each series. And we understand that we have not done that well enough to date in this year. We see the last several years as successful ones, not ending in the World Series. It obviously ends with the disappointment, that it doesn't mean, in our view, that it wasn't successful. This year has been different. We are not in a great position. We've put ourselves in a very difficult one. We're still, feel that there is time, with the right energy and focus on each day and each at bat and each pitch, that we can turn things around, but it has to happen soon.
You say it has to happen soon. Realistically, when does time run out in this group, to your mind? I mean, I'm not asking you to pick a date, but when does time run out for this group?
Well, I mean, it's kind of built into the question. Picking a date versus not, which we wouldn't do. There's deadlines in the game, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's a trade deadline, which is a natural one, and we're not going to self-impose another one. We'll use every day to its benefit and power to learn more about how we can, right now our focus is on this team and the 24 season and make the best possible run. We know it needs to be a very good one. And then if we need to pivot, we'll be prepared to do so.
Ross, you talked last season's lack of offense as a blip or a one-off. How do you view this year so far when it comes to your offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, really that was one comment about, specifically to one question. And when I use that terminology, having said that, last year's offense was lower than what we expected in terms of run scoring. A lot of individual performances were very solid, but not enough to score enough runs that we feel, certainly in the playoffs, we didn't score enough to make a run. And we scored enough to get into them, but it's more about finding ways and solutions to be more consistent, to, score more on a regular basis. And it just doesn't fall on one individual, one player, or two or three players. So therefore, it has to fall on me. And for us to correct that in the best possible way that we can, we're working tirelessly towards that. And I'm, everything in my power, everything in our power to improve upon it, understand that we put ourselves behind.
Do you think maybe, Ross, that you guys overreacted to that? The front office, pardon me, not you guys. The front office overreacted to that playoff loss to Seattle 2 years ago, and put the focus on run prevention, maybe at the expense of offense, right? Like, it seems to me you traded 3 everyday players, Lourdes, Teoscar, and, Gabriel Moreno. I mean, whatever his numbers are, at least he could play every day. And you traded basically a third of a lineup for a bullpen arm and, one guy, Dalton Varsho, who's a terrific defender. Do you think that maybe you course-corrected too much in that offseason, and that it's been you've basically spent the past 2 years trying to, I guess, course-correct the course correction?
Nah, I mean, listen, I'll take I understand the question. I understand the criticism because the outcomes are definitely in line with that question. But we would have to go back and dissect those trades and then where playing time was, where money was, and how it's reallocated for it to answer it that black and white. So, I could do that, but it would eat up the next 10 or 15 minutes on one question and probably not the most productive use of our time. Really excited about the acquisition of Dalton Varsho from his defense and his offense this year. Some home runs last year, but he's really, really been a good piece to the puzzle for us, that understanding that puzzle's not solved, that we need to continue to improve it and it needs to get better. But no, it's about building the best possible team with the resources that you have. And at each juncture trying to do that, which is today, we're still trying to do that.
You said in a recent interview, I think it was on the MLB Network. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of talk at this point where this team is about the future of Vladdy and Bo. And you said that trading Vladdy or Bo, quote, wouldn't make sense for us. Why?
Well, for a lot of reasons. They're really good players that are part of the solution is the first one, and all of our energy is focused on supporting them at this point. They are part of the solution is the main reason to that, and it's not just about this year, as they're under control next year, and they've been very important to the organization, and we hope that they continue to be. So there's obviously the opportunity to extend them as well. So
are we to take from that answer then that you think you can still sign them? Because, I mean, I'm sure you know as well as anybody, I mean, the industry frankly doesn't think you're going to be able to sign both of them, or it would have been done by now.
Yeah, I think that opportunity is still there. Now, it's not going to happen before the trade deadline. A lot of that dialogue doesn't happen in season. It would take a lot, on both sides for that to happen in this next off season. And certainly if it doesn't, then it would, we can obviously have an opportunity to do so in free agency or just before free agency. I still think it's realistic for that to occur.
Ross, it's obvious that George has been underperforming. How do you know when it's time to platoon him so, he can get back to who he is as an offensive player?
Yeah, if we didn't see first of all, the work and the willingness to think about adjustments in a really significant way. And I say significant, it's not like George Springer needs an overhaul. He's still a very talented player, and baseball is a really hard game that as well as anyone. And his openness and his work to tweaking the adjustments to the way he's being attacked and the increase in velo that's happened in this game and the increase also not only just in velo, but in slider and curveball usage and how that should impact his work. And then the recent results that we see that don't end up in a stat line as productively as they do in just watching the games, and how good his at-bats have been, how good his misses have been, and some of the contact has really been encouraging, where, you know, to us, to our hitting coaches, to Schneid's, to myself, he looks like a force. And it just hasn't turned into the results that we need, but we're confident it still can.
Can you see how that would frustrate the hell out of people, though?
I understand frustration. I share it. It's not something that, you know, we just sit back and say it's going to happen. Everything that we do is measured, and everything that we do is to win baseball games.
Ross, I'm wondering, you know, I'm not a fan when reporters say, you know, we've got emails from people or we've heard from people, but I mean, we do a call-in show and we do hear from people. And quite frankly, we've had people call up and say that they're almost at the point where it's not that they don't like the team, they don't necessarily like watching it. And I'm just wondering, look, this is a marketing thing as well as anything else. It's a consumer product as well as anything else. Are you worried that maybe, you know, there's been a lot of the goodwill that was built up here in 2015 and 2016 has been burnt? How do you get that back? Is it just a matter of winning?
Well, winning, you know, is the most important. That is for sure. There's a lot of things you can do to, you know, to build your fan base, but I think nothing is more powerful than winning, and that's where all of our energy goes. And although it does, you know, bother me to hear that, I share the frustration. I share, you know, all of the stress that comes with the difficulty of not realizing our potential and meeting our expectation. But where our focus and energy goes is back to doing everything we can to win, acknowledging that hasn't happened to date this year. And that's where our focus is.
Ross, I think you would be talking about, obviously we talked about Vladdy, how good he looks, and you know, how that would help you guys starting to win more. I would think the other guy is Bo. Ross, I don't know about you, but this is sort of the most lost I've ever seen Bo at the plate. It just looks like, you know, he's a free swinger, but I don't think like this, right? And just some of the pitches that we consistently see him miss is just odd. Is there anything you guys can point your finger at to maybe speed the process along? I know John's putting him in the leadoff spot, maybe giving him a little confidence, sort of giving him a different look, a different routine. Maybe that'll help. But is anybody in your front office seeing something that maybe could help Bo speed things along, make him a little bit better, quicker?
Yeah, you know, his swing looks good. He's always been a hitter that loves to see the ball deep, and he's one of the best in the game at doing so. I'm so confident that that is going to bode well for him. He knows how to adjust the velo. He knows how to adjust the hitters that are attacking him in different ways. It has been a tough stretch for him, but I will bet on him all day long figuring it out. And to answer your question, if we saw something, then hopefully we would have already gotten it corrected. I think, you know, it's really just, it's such a difficult thing to do is to hit. And that's not by any means something we can rest on. You know, it's difficult for every team and difficult for every hitter. But I just have so much confidence. We have so much confidence in Bo that he's going to get it turned around, and he's going to be a big part of the solution.
You know, Ross, historically, you guys have been pretty good at addressing pitching issues, whether it's through free agency or, you know, I think back of the in-season trades for Adam Simber and Trevor Richards, which were huge acquisitions. Why have you not moved as boldly this year to address some pretty significant bullpen issues? And, you know, when you kind of decided to run it back with this group, do you think now that maybe, you know, good intentions aside, it was a little bit of misplaced faith in some of the relievers?
Well, we've had some really positive stories. We're very confident that we're hopeful and confident that we'll get, you know, Yemi and Jordan back into the fold. They're you know, obviously big pieces of the equation. We felt like and feel like we've had good depth to step up. Nate Pearson's been very good for us. Chad Green's obviously been very good, which is why we extended last year. Then we've had good stories in Brandon Little, and Timmy Meza hasn't had the year that he normally has, but we know he's a contact guy, and that's going to happen. And Cabrera's been throwing the ball a lot better. So Trevor Richards, you mentioned, has been phenomenal. Mm-hmm. So when you think about replacement, it's where. And, just replacing Yimi Garcia or just replacing Jordan Romano is not an easy thing to do. Any team that has a player that's available of that magnitude is not looking to sell them at this point. So it'd be hard to acquire somebody at that level. So the way that we've adjusted this year is from within, and we've had some guys step up in a pretty positive way.
Leaving aside Bo and Vladdy, do you have enough pieces you can move to maybe correct 2024? In other words, guys who are potential free agents that you can move and maybe not throw in the towel in a year, but give this team something it doesn't have right now.
I'm sorry, Jeff, I don't understand. Are you asking about adding to the team in 24?
Yeah, leaving Bo and Vladdy aside. Do you have enough, whether it's minor league players of interest or guys on the roster, you could move that would, help this year, right? As well as looking ahead.
We absolutely do. We recognize that our farm system, after 5 years of pushing to get into this position of having competitive teams, and albeit this year not where we want to be, we have been aggressive in adding to the group from a trade standpoint. So we recognize that our farm system is taking a hit because of that, but we certainly still have the pieces to acquire talent for this year and beyond.
Ross, as you well know, whenever a team that has expectations like your team do, there's a lot of unknowns around the manager. We're big fans of John because every Friday he comes on, he's very open. We ask questions, just like we're asking questions of you, and, he answers them the best he can. But the big question is, and it'll continue to be this, will John be the manager at the end of the season? And that's the question I have you in your mind. Do you think he will be the manager for the Blue Jays at the end of the season?
He has my full support. He is tough, smart, and prepared, and he has the clubhouse. He's done an incredible job as a young manager coming into a very, very intense environment and learning and growing from it. He's had to make adjustments, but he is tough and smart, and he has my full support.
I always tell people that when I started hosting a sports talk show, I cashed in my journalist card for the most part, and I'm more of a fan than anything else. And I'm a fan of good baseball, and I hate bad baseball. As I'm sure I'm not the only one in that category. But what would you say to those of us who wonder whether or not, in addition to saving 2024, whether or not you and the rest of the front office, deserve an opportunity, to deserve a chance to create the next window of opportunity, because that's where this discussion is going to go eventually.
Yeah, Jeff, I just focus on the job and the task at hand that I can control, and understand the frustration that our fans have. And I believe it's fair for fans to be frustrated with our expectations as we share them. All of our energy just turns to how can we get better, make sure we're not finger pointing, make sure we're not casting blame in any way, and ensure that we have a solution-focused environment. And I'm so proud and impressed of our players and in our staff, and especially of John Schneider, because the stress is real. It is a very, very, very strong feeling that you have in these jobs and in these roles. And our players and John Schneider and his staff have weathered that stress exceptionally well by thinking about solutions and support. And I know that's not good enough, but because of that, that gives us hope and confidence that our players can get it turned around. And to answer your question on the status of the front office, I just focus, just as we ask our players to do, on things that are solution focused.
You think you guys still have the support of ownership then in your mind?
We certainly feel that, yes. And all of my energy and focus is on solutions.
Ross, really good of you to do this today. Really appreciate your time. Thanks so much, man.
Appreciate it, Ross.
Anytime,
Thank you
Jeff.
so much.
Okay, Kevin.
Take care.
See you guys.
See you.
It's Ross Atkins, Executive Vice President and General Manager of the Toronto Blue Jays. And, it's, look, whether it's Shi Davidi, Ken Rosen, there's a lot of talk in the national media in the United States And not that I'm dismissing everybody else, every other reporter, but when folks like Ken Rosenthal start talking about people are wondering whether the front office, whether there's stability there, people are starting to talk about Ross's contract. People are talking about Mark's only got a year left. The stadium's done for the most part. Mm-hmm. It's an issue. And, I like to think that one of the reasons it's an issue is because so many people really care about this team. But what has also become obvious to us, I think, in the last month, Kevin, is there is, this fan base is more frustrated. Like I go back before JP Ricciardi's time, and I think in some ways this fan base is maybe more frustrated now than I can remember it, and the industry's disappointed in the Blue Jays too.
Yeah, I think so.
How many people have we had on that picked the Blue Jays?
Passan, who's coming on today, he says that every single time he comes on.
So I think it's understandable that this organization,
lost opportunity, Jeff. I think that's what everybody thinks.
Under the microscope.
Right? Absolutely.
We appreciate Ross for joining us. We're going to take a break and come back. It's Blair and Barker on Sportsnet 590, The Fan, and Sportsnet. All right, 7:07 will be the first pitch. At the Rogers Center, the Yankees in town for 4 games against the Blue Jays. And as you heard in our conversation with Ross Atkins, and indeed Ross Atkins' media availability earlier, I get the sense that we're getting to a point here where, for the first time this year, I got the sense that this organization is ready to make a call. Mm-hmm. It's the first time this year. And, going back, I think what happened, and Ross made this point, and I didn't ask him a question on but he made the point very clearly in his media scrum. He talked about how it's day to day, and I know when people say day to day, they roll their eyes, but I really think in this case it is, because he did make a point, and it is well made. 10 days ago, we were talking about this team differently than we are now.
No question.
And Ross was also asked during his media availability about, you look around baseball, and look at the Mets. Mets were dead. Mets were going to trade Pete Alonso. Mm-hmm. The Mets are a game and a half out of the wild card. Houston Astros were done. They were behind the Blue Jays in the standings.
They were never dumping the truck, though.
No, but I'm saying, but they won a few games in a row.
They did, yeah.
And they're back at it. Yeah. So in some ways, I get why the Jays have taken this approach. And whether or not we agree with it, if you believe in your people and your process, which they clearly do.
Absolutely.
And I'm not, let's just work with me on this. Let's not argue. I think we can all agree that they believe in their people and their process. In this type of a season, with this type of market, I think it's awfully hard to pull the chute on something, especially when you're running a $235 million payroll. And attendance is, what is it down? It's down 4,000 per game roughly from last year.
Good enough.
So sometimes I need to remind myself that, and I think we need to remind ourselves of that it's not just a matter of waking up one morning and saying, screw it, let's blow up.
Well,
let's blow it all up.
It's almost like a process, right, where you have to check everything off the checklist. And it just, now this is what it seemed to me like listening to him talk on our show just now and in the scrum earlier, that they checked all the boxes. Like there's no more boxes to check. They were trying everything.
I think the only box that remains to be checked is, where are we compared to the Yankees? And this is where you get, if they were to take 3 or 4 this weekend against the Yankees, that's one thing. If they split with the Yankees, that's one thing. If they get bum rushed by the Yankees and lose 4 in a row,
make it easier for them to sell it, right?
Exactly. So I think this, and then of course you got Houston coming. And look, if you get hammered by the Yankees, and then you got the improving Houston Astros come in, and you don't match up against them, then you only need to. I don't know about you, but I only need to get slapped in the face 3 times before I realize that. But I get back to this. I get why there is a bit of a reluctance to just punt on the season. And here's the other thing: even if we need to keep this in mind. As much as I like transparency, The Jays are under no obligation to tell us publicly what they're going to do. Like people say, well, I'm paying for tickets. I should know what they're going to do. Well, no, they're not going to weaken their position. And you shouldn't want them to weaken their position. Ross isn't going to come on and say, you know what, fellas, screw it. We're done.
Yeah.
Here, my number, 1-888, whatever. Call me. Call Ross. And 1-800, call Ross. And give me your players, and you can have Bo. It's not going to work that way. And the other thing that Ross didn't touch on, but also needs to be mentioned, I think, is, front offices only have so much bandwidth. And right now, they're all preparing for the draft. And I think once that's over, then I think, and I'm not saying that, you can't walk and chew gum at the same time, but I've talked to enough GMs to know that the draft, especially the way it is now, the draft is pretty labor intensive. Once that's done,
it's a process.
Then you turn everything. Then you turn around.
Yeah,
and,
it did sound like
your team.
It did sound like that he's getting some interest with his minor league system. It did sound like it. Obviously he's not going to come on here and say we got the worst minor league system in baseball.
They don't. They only have the 10th worst.
But it did seem like the interest might have been a little bit there. That where if they did want to make some moves and add and subtract the way they wanted to do it, they could do that.
I was thinking more of guys in the
at
roster.
The big league level.
Now they're hamstrung without Jordan Romano. In a perfect world, Jordan Romano's here, Jimmy Garcia's here and healthy, and you move one of them, and maybe you don't move one of them for something that's going to help you next year. Maybe you move one of them for, I don't know, a left-handed bat that can play third base every day. It doesn't have to be a superstar, but maybe you get a guy in here who's better than what you have. And that's what I was getting at with the trades, because I really do believe this, and I know this is kind of counterintuitive, but I'm just, man, if you're going to move Vladdy or Bo, you have to do it in the off season, because you got to get your ducks lined up. And that's just me. Am I willing to do that and take less of a package in return? I am, frankly, because when those two guys go, I got to move a whole bunch of pieces around. Like when those two guys go, I need to start thinking about.
It's not a pivot anymore.
No, it's not. When those two guys go, I need to start thinking, do I really need to spend $95 million on my starting rotation? Yeah. No, I don't. If those guys are gone, I don't. Does that make Kevin Gossman available? Yep. Does that make Chris Bassett available? Yep.
Barrios? Ooh.
No.
Somebody's got to pitch.
Unless Jose Barrios looks around and goes, get me out of here. And don't forget, he's got an opt-out after 2026. He's got a player opt-out. I need the one thing I know when I wake up in the morning is I can go look at the schedule and go, Jose Barrios is going to make a start on Wednesday, or Jose Barrios is going to start on Tuesday. It's the one thing I know about this team. Jose Barrios is going to take the ball and start and be okay, sometimes really good, as long as they leave him in the game.
From listening to him, you think they have a plan?
I think they're formulating a plan.
You think it's in the works?
I think it's in the works.
Yeah, me too. That's what I'm getting from it. I think up until maybe if I'd asked you that 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago or even a week ago.
I think there's always.
Maybe not. He mentioned the 10 days for a reason.
Yeah, I think there's always, you're always.
But it's not sped up as much as it is now, I think.
I think most general managers spend a lot of their time, with the napkin going, okay, if I go him and call him, can I get him? So I don't think that I don't think a general manager, I don't think Ross ever stops thinking about how to make the team better. And, but I do think that there is, at some point, stuff becomes obvious. And then the question is, and that's why I asked him, I'm just telling what the fans are telling me. I don't think the fans trust these guys, trust Ross and Mark to rebuild this team. Now, and I don't like saying the fans because that's kind of a Weasley way of reporters. That's when a reporter is scared to say, Ross, I don't think you guys are capable of doing this. When a reporter says, we hear from fans. Yeah. But we do hear from fans because we do take calls. Yeah, and that is the feeling.
Absolutely.
That is the feeling.
Well, it's been obvious to, I think, a bunch of fans for the last couple of off seasons. And this is, for whatever reason, it hasn't been obvious to the front office. Why is that?
And this is why sometimes I think, think about let's leave aside for a moment whether or not it would be good business to sign Vladdy to an 8-year contract. Just leave that aside for now. Don't get into the numbers. But if the Jays had locked up Vladdy or Bo 2 years ago, I think fans and those of us in the media would be a little more confident about where this thing is going, because there's a commitment there to one player. He is going to be here, and regardless of whether what we think of Bo or Vladdy as players, people like to watch. I mean, they're the reason, they're the draws, man.
Yeah,
nobody's tuning in the game to watch. I love IKF. Nobody's tuning in the game to watch IKF. Nope. Nobody's tuning in the game to watch Spencer Horwitz. They're just not. You need to have star power. And I felt all along that people's perception of this front office has been affected by the fact that they haven't been able to lock one of those two guys up. Because Kansas City's locking up Bobby Witt Jr. Is he better than both of these guys? Probably. But that's not my point here. My point is you're probably not, let's be clear, in another 3 years, you're probably not going to have a better player than Vladdy Jr. in here. You're just not.
That's fair.
So why isn't he locked up? And I get the shared risk thing. I get all that. But sometimes, man, you just got to look at it and go, and this gets back to what ownership is spending too. If you had told me that ownership would be running a $235 million payroll and it wouldn't include a long-term contract for Bo or Vladdy, I just would not have believed you. I would have called BS on it. So, anyhow, that's I know a lot of times we keep going around and around and around, but I like to think that I
think there's some clarity here.
I'm viewing this as a fan, and I'm viewing this as somebody who I'm invested in this. I want this team to do well.
Me too. Well, it's easier for us. I think it's I think the 4 games against the Yankees is going to tell us everything we need to know. I think that's where it's at. That's that. You get that feel or no?
Oh yeah,
I get the feel too. Even when you said it, as soon as Ross came on and you said this is a big series, and he agreed, like it was like sort of this is going to tell us a lot of what we need to know of where we're trying to go here and who we need to be making phone calls about, right? I mean, they've got pieces that they can move, that contracts are about to go, the Jansons of the world, the Jimmy Gardner. Like it's, I think that's it. Like you just can't keep them, Jeff, like you just can't. So
yeah, I'm not certain how, I'm not certain how much you get for.
Yeah, but I think nothing's not an option. It's just not.
No,
it's not anymore.
No, you're not pocketing the draft picks.
No.
I don't think necessarily does anything. But then, I've one thing that I really do wonder about as well is, it's a cutthroat business being a general manager, and that if another general manager thinks Ross and Mark are on the outs, they're going to approach the team differently. They're going to approach the Jays differently about players. And, man, that's that's an uncomfortable place to be.
Well, in my mind, let's be fair. The only 3 guys that you would really try and maximize is Barrios, Bo, and Vladdy. The other ones, you're going to get what you get. Like it's not like you're going to get a truck backed up and you're getting 4 or 5 good players for Jimmy Garcia. It's just not going to happen. So I agree with that a little bit, but on the flip side of it, you're going to get what you get.
Shi Davidi, Sportsnet's MLB insider.
That's a good hour, Jeff.
He joins us at 5 o'clock. Jeff Passan, MLB insider with ESPN, will be along. We'll take a look at his top additions for contenders at the trade deadline. We've got Jays tickets to give away to see the Houston Astros in town. It's Blair and Barker on Sportsnet 590, The Fan and Sportsnet. All right, well, could you please tell Hazel if she's going to make news to do it before the show?
It's like a...
Like, send her a text and say, come on.
She got her job, I got mine. Okay?
Hazel May, friend of the show. I don't know why I even said that.
What's the matter, Chief?
Hazel May just tweeting out, literally a couple of minutes ago, not even a couple of minutes ago. Let me just make sure I get it right. I've credited Hazel, but let me make sure I get it right because it's about Bo. Spoke to Bo Bichette about trade rumors and deadline talk. This is Hazel. I asked him whether he'd be surprised if he were moved at the trade deadline. Answer, quote, no. Not surprised at all. So
he don't like leading off?
I think Bo is. So let's just take a deep breath here. He's not saying he wants to be traded publicly. But we know Bo enough. Yep. You've talked to him more than I have. I've had limited conversations with him, but every now and then, he doesn't say something accidentally. He's not
he's a matter of fact.
Yeah,
here it is, buddy.
Yeah, he's not a guy
who's
go out
of his way.
He's not a guy who's just going to let it roll.
No.
So there you go. Let's bring in Shi Davidi, our MLB insider with Sportsnet.
Buddy.
Look at you.
Look at
you.
Wow.
Oh, man. On Zoom and everything.
Whoa.
That's it.
Did you get some sun?
He does look.
You got some.
You look sharp, buddy.
I'm in a very dark spot, so
okay.
I don't annoy everybody else in the press box here.
Oh, it's okay. We annoy everybody all the time anyway, so we're used to it.
That looks good.
Yeah, he does look
do
sharp.
Do you work to get that gray layered? Like, do you have to, or does that just come naturally?
No, that's natural.
Okay.
That's 2 decades of covering this team, I think.
Yeah, that's true. And having 2 sons. So there you go. So a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack, obviously. Ross Atkins did his media availability with you folks, and he came on our show. And, consistent, I think I could say. Mm-hmm. But, Shi, you really do get the sense that I don't know if they have a plan completely in front of them right now because the draft and everything is going on, but they've started thinking about how and when they're going to pivot, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is perfectly clear. And look, the situation absolutely dictates that, right? I think that you can pretty much see how this is going to play out, right? The Blue Jays let it run through to close to July 30th, see where they are. Maybe there's a very low probability outcome here in the offing where they turn it around and it looks sustainable and they can climb back into this thing in some meaningful way. But, the numbers very clearly don't state that, right? The public projection models don't like that. I would assume that their internal modeling is pretty similar in that regard. And so the Blue Jays have to be prepared. And so they're working on, Ross suggested they're working on 3 tracks. He didn't want it put sort of in as definitive terms as this, but essentially it's buy, sell, hold. And how the next couple of weeks play out will determine which one that it is. And it's pretty clear that it's going to be some degree of sell, with as much talk as he mentioned about continuing to build on this group. That's certainly pointing to wanting to bring enough of that group back. So any sell would really be focused on the expiring contracts, and the 1+ players would be less likely on the table. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that, which we can get into later. But that it's very clear what is before this team, and that is a sell, unless something extraordinarily unlikely happens.
Shi, how do they do this to make everybody happy? Everybody.
I don't know that you can make everybody happy, right? Like, the pain is coming, and to some degree.
They should just worry about making me happy.
Yeah,
I don't really care about anybody else.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so there is no making people happy this year, right? Like, this year is not, again, barring the 1% or, I guess technically 5% outcome right now, that this season is not going to end in a happy way. And so I think what you're trying to do is just make this as best as possible, turning some of your expiring contracts into some assets that are going to potentially help you for the future. Try to figure out in a deep and meaningful way what you really have in terms of some of the young players who've come up, some other potentially near-term players in your farm system who could contribute for you in 25 and beyond. And then see what will the market allow you to do this offseason to make this a bit more of a realistic run for next year, and perhaps build something into 26 and beyond. So I think that's what's left in terms of, a happy endings. I mean, there's the fairy tale outcome, but most of the time we don't live in a fairy tale world.
Shi, Hazel just tweeted a couple of minutes ago that she spoke to Bo about trade rumors and deadline talk And she asked him whether he'd be surprised if he were moved at the deadline, and his answer was no, not surprised at all. Now, we were talking about just when you came on, you may have heard us. We kind of know. I think we have a pretty good idea about how Bo addresses situations like this. How do you take that? Do you take no, let me rephrase that. Do you think that will make any difference to how the front office approaches the deadline, knowing that they have a player who has publicly said he wouldn't be surprised if he was traded? And essentially, you know as well as I do, Bo is now, I can tell you what, he's going to be asked this question every city they go to from this point on.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be really interesting if the Jays had another series with the Dodgers coming up, because I think that might be the one market where that question is most pertinent. But I don't think it changes anything in any meaningful way, because I think the part of the reason he's thinking like that, I think anybody who doesn't have a ton of term, including the one that would count any 1+ player, would have to think, all right, I could very well be traded, because that's what teams in these situations do. Now, I think that part of the issue here is that a lot of other clubs, at least to this point, the indications that I've had have been essentially, quote, ambulance chasing around the Jays. Mm-hmm. So would you do something dumb in a trade for Bo? Would you do something dumb in a trade for Vladdy? Would you do something dumb in a trade for whoever? And the Blue Jays can't do that. They have ample reason to try and bring back a good group for 25 and take another run at this. And so unless there's something that's really compelling for them, I don't believe that they'll be that they're going to make any move like that. Now, maybe some team decides to make a meaningful deal, and at that point, the Jays can say, this is a baseball trade. This isn't just a sacrifice trade. But unless it's a baseball deal rather than just we're selling off assets, so we're trying to get what we can for it, I don't think that is on the horizon.
Do you think that? I'm trying to figure out how to ask this. If they do trade Bo, let's just say out of interest sake, I was going to say if they trade one of them, but let's just say if they trade Bo, does that make it maybe not easier to sign Vladdy, but does that maybe increase the pressure to get one of them done? Because I think we've all kind of thought that it's going to be hard to get both of these guys locked up. If you move one guy from the equation, then maybe it's easier to proceed with the second guy. Or is that, am I overthinking it there?
I just think that the reality is it's going to be very hard for them to make a deal unless they want to pay what could potentially be the market rate for both those guys. Like, they're both so close to free agency. What incentive do they have to take any sort of discount or try to maximize to not maximize their earnings and to sign a deal when they're not coming off, at least to this point, their best seasons, right?
Yeah.
If I was one of those two players, I'd want to come back in 25, crush it as best I can, and then try to hit the market or negotiate an extension from a position of strength. So unless the Blue Jays wanted to meet them that way, and if you're the Blue Jays, why would you want to pay a rate beyond what the performance has been? I just don't see the middle ground there. And so unless there's a very substantial shift on one side or the other, I'm just not sure that the extension discussion is one worth having, because I just don't see any of the factors that you need being in place on both sides, and the common ground, the common interest. And then the other thing for the Blue Jays to think about, and I asked Ross this, and I understand kind of the scenarios are different and some of the pieces are different, but in 17 and 18, they had players that they held on to. They were trying to win, but it was tepid, and they were trying to not put too much in place because they were trying to mitigate against what they thought was a roster on the verge of falling off a cliff. And there are some parallels there right now. Like the Blue Jays they're not necessarily aging out. They're just controlling out, where you have 15 players who are on this current team that are going to be gone at the end of the 25 season, or at least potentially be gone. And so, okay, so you extend Bo, you extend Vlad. Well, what are you putting around them? Yeah. And if you're not able to build around them, then why are you extending them? So I think that's, as much as this is right now what they're kind of facing, it's a question about 24, what you do. The bigger question to me is, what are you doing in 2026? Because if you aren't building towards something in 26 and it's just hey, let's see if we can win this in 25, I'm not sure that's a good place to be, because you can end up holding on to assets for too long. They get devalued. They walk away for little or nothing, which is what happened with Josh Donaldson. They didn't get a ton for Marcus Stroman back. They didn't get a ton for Jay Happ. And that ends up undermining the foundation of your rebuild down the road.
Shi, how do you control the feel of the room? Now that the GMs came out and said what he said on our show just now, and then that scrum with you, basically that their rubbers met the road here. Like, it's win time. I just wonder in that clubhouse, I've never been on a team like this that had expectations and had as good of players in the everyday lineup as the Blue Jays have got. But I would think, and Ross has made it a point to say there's no finger pointing. But, boy, if I'm in that locker room and I start to hear this, especially in the rotation, especially if you're Bo and Vladdy, if you're Turner, who's an older guy who came here to help you make a decent little run at this thing, I just don't know how the coaching staff controls that. Can you get a feel of that? Have you felt that? Is that a problem, you think?
I don't think any of that is new, Kev. Like, I think this has been, like, I've had conversations about this going back to May, where it's like, we've got to get this straightened out so we're in a position to buy at the trade deadline, right? I think everybody understands what the control is in that room, where the contracts lie, what everything that happens means for 24, 25 and beyond. I don't know that anybody there would be surprised by this. And I think that this is a team that still has fight in it. I think you saw that even in the way they played in Boston the last 2 days before the rainout. They've got nothing to lose. Obviously, there are individual incentives right now where you've got some guys who are pending free agents, so they want to finish their season strong. You've got some guys who are free agents on the horizon, so they want to make sure that they're building up their value. And ultimately, look, you don't have to be great to win the third wild card. The Jays, they had a terrible week and a half, and that got them into this spot. And if they have an amazing week and a half, then maybe we can have a bit of a different conversation. But there's a lot of heavy lifting that has to happen. And I think the players understand that if they want to change the direction that this team is headed, then it has to happen in performance on the field.
There's no feelings in baseball is what you're trying to say, Shi.
I think there's feelings in baseball, but I don't, none of this is surprising to anybody.
Yeah, I think
like
correct.
Nobody can be like, what? I didn't see that coming. Like, I mean, this has been coming since the off season, really. I mean, everybody understood that this team is in the situation that it is, that it's got the period of control that's expiring for the vast majority, close to 60% of the roster, that these were the questions that are going to be around this team. And I mean, guys are smart. They know how business works, and this is how the business works.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that
well said.
That's really well said. One of the things we asked Ross, and this surprises me a little bit. I understand it's early. It's June 27th, although it's getting late early, or whatever, however you describe it. But one of the things we have seen, I think Ross do relatively successfully. Indeed, I think maybe the most successful thing he's done is they've generally been pretty good at addressing bullpen issues. Like, you go back to Simber and Trevor Richards, which two trades that I don't think they make the playoffs without.
What would they be without Richards?
Guys. Without Richards, yeah, exactly. Man. Are you surprised that they haven't at least tried to address the bullpen? No disrespect to Chad Green, and I understand he's under contract, but I mean, there have been a lot of games where John Schneider's gone into it with 3 unavailable bullpen arms and another bullpen arm he didn't really trust. Like, I'm just surprised that has been allowed to just kind of be there. And I understand Jordan Romano, Jimmy Garcia get hurt. That's going to be a body blow. But I'm really surprised they haven't tried to address the bullpen.
Well, I also think that there only so much you can do where, your top 4 leverage guys, 2 of them are hurt and 2 of them aren't performing. One of them isn't performing to the degree that he's at AAA right now, trying to get himself right, in Eric Swanson. And Tim Meza hasn't been there. Chad Green has had some health problems. And so the Blue Jays have dug really deep into their system. And you've got Nate Pearson up, and you've got Zach Pop up, and you've got Brandon Little suddenly pitching in some leverage. And if there were guys out there who they thought could help them, I think they would absolutely make an effort to get them. I mean, even going out and trying to get Ryan Burr, who they picked up and has been up and down a couple times, that's an example of them trying. So I just don't think, I think in general, you're seeing a shortage of pitching everywhere. I don't know that you can conjure up quality relief work. And, I think back to 21, how long it took them to fix that bullpen, and how long they were running with Tyler Chatwood in leverage and Travis Bergen in leverage.
That's
and
true.
Yoel Payamps before he'd figured it out. And Castro and all these other guys who they threw into that mix, desperately hoping to try and find something that worked. And it ultimately cost them the division that year. Because if you one game better in any of the number of dozens of games that that bullpen blew, they're in the playoffs and might have had probably would have had a really deep run given how good that team was.
I think you made the point that and I think you're right. I think that was this core's best shot was 2021.
Yeah, it was their best shot, and it was the best team. Like statistically, by any measure that you look, it was the best team that they've had. And you had it was such a perfect storm, right? You had the second and third place in the MVP race in Vladdy and Marcus Semien. You had the Cy Young Award winner. You added Jose Barrios to join Robbie Ray. You had Steven Matz on a good year. Teoscar Hernandez and Bo Bichette were all-stars along with Vladdy and Semien. It was just about as deep as you're going to get. And so, that is the year that may very well haunt or should haunt this front office, because that was the year to have gone all in on. And, at the deadline, they had a chance to get Raisel Iglesias. They didn't end up doing that. And it ended up being Brad Hand and Joaquim Soria, who joined Jose Barrios in a great deadline deal, one that's been very good for the franchise. But it's those little things that take away some of the opportunity. You lost that chance, and it's one that you can't get back.
Shi, I talked to Pete Walker quite a bit, and whenever I talk to him, I ask him about Yariel Rodriguez. He's very quiet, he's very hush-hush. I'll ask him saying some things, trying to poke at him to get him to tell me what he thinks he's going to end up being and what they're going to try and do with him. It's either he doesn't know, or he's basically, telling me to beat it. I'm not going to tell you because we're working on things.
Probably that.
Shi, do you have any idea? I mean, all I hear is about the stuff he has. If you can't throw strikes with your fastball, who cares what kind of stuff you got? Shi, where do they use him at? Is he a starter? Is he a pin guy? How do they find out what he is, I think is the question.
I think it's obviously a very important question for the Blue Jays, especially because you've got Yusei Kikuchi pending free agent, and you don't have Alek Manoah for the majority of next year in all likelihood. I think with Yariel Rodriguez, you've got a few challenges, right? So you've got a guy who didn't pitch competitively last year because he was transitioning from Cuba to North America. So he's coming off a lost year. He'd been a reliever for multiple seasons in Japan before that, but he's determined to start, and the Jays believe in him as a starter. And so you're asking a guy who's just been doing sprints, coming off a year which he didn't do much running at all, to suddenly run a marathon. And that's going to be a messy transition. And so do the Blue Jays definitively know what he is? No. Does he definitively know everything that he needs to do to get his body ready for that? No. And he's learning that on the fly. And he's learning that on the fly on a team that's trying to win. And so none of that is ideal. None of that is exactly what you would want or how you would draw it up. So I think for now, the Blue Jays have to live through some growing pains. And maybe this is a little bit like Yusei Kikuchi's first season in Toronto, where, he took a lot of lumps. He had to go through a lot of struggles before he could figure out what he needed to do to be successful as a starter. And then it locked in, and it was great in years 2 and 3 so far. And maybe that's something, the process is something similar for Yariel Rodriguez.
Yep.
Shi, good stuff. Really appreciate you doing this.
Way
Thanks,
to go,
man.
buddy. You look sharp, too,
yeah,
buddy.
You do. You
Can't wait to see you on TV later. You look sharp.
I appreciate it, guys.
Take care,
man.
man.
Good job.
Be well. Shi Davidi, our MLB insider with Sportsnet. A hardworking man.
He is. He's all over the place. You know, it's not easy to get it, report it, and people still like you for it. It's not like that. You know it as well as anybody.
I was going to say, why are you looking at
me? You know it as well as
anybody. Why do you think I went out of my way to tell Ross that I don't consider myself a journalist anymore? I traded my journalist card in when I became a sports talk show host.
You know, printing the truth is a tough thing to do. It's like this show. Anybody that tunes into this show knows we're going to tell it like it is. And 99.9999999% of the time, it's the truth.
Well, sometimes.
And the truth is a pain in the butt to hear.
I mean,
and that's,
I don't really.
I think that's.
The whole khakis thing is people actually.
It's a fact.
With you, it is. People actually think that. I keep telling people, I don't hate the khakis.
Don't listen to Jeff. He does.
I don't.
Yeah, he's afraid of the khakis because he sees them all the time in the lunchroom at the field.
No, I just don't. I've said it. Like, information is good. Information is good.
It's overload. You know, Jeff. Every once in a while, you got to go as a manager, pencil in them names, and just go, man. My talent's way better than you are. Just get out of the way. I don't need 45 people behind the scenes telling me what kind of breaking ball and when it's throwing it and how many times it's throwing it.
I hate to break it to you.
Yeah,
I hate to break it to everybody else, to Blue Jays fans. You could dynamite this front office tonight. And,
don't say it.
And you're, it's still, they're not taking the laptops away. Trust me.
Yeah,
you know what they'll do? They'll be taking people out, but they're going to be leaving the laptops.
Everybody sort of does, I'm assuming, the same exact thing the Blue Jays have. It's just those top-end teams have the talent consistently to go out there and execute it. That's the difference.
That is the difference. And maybe what the Jays need to do is what the Yankees did in the offseason. They brought in khakis to analyze the khakis. Remember?
Or just go out and get Soto. Bing, bang, boom.
Or go out and get Soto.
Yeah.
The Yankees did that. The Yankees brought in consultants.
Get you looking over there and go get that guy.
The Yankees brought in consultants to make sure that their consultants were consulting properly.
I'm not saying there's not room for it. I'm just saying
we live in an era of consultants.
Every once in a while.
An era of consultants.
If not, people are going to start saying your manager has no idea. He's never played or seen a baseball game before.
It's the cakification of khakis.
Boy, welcome to my side, Jeff.
I've been.
It's your show.
Both of us have been.
Look at the top of the first thing.
We've been giving you a chance to see the Blue Jays all season long on Blair and Barker. A chance to win Blue Jays tickets. All you have to do is text the correct answer to our daily baseball trivia question to 590-590. This time we're giving away tickets to see the Jays and the Houston Astros.
We are giving them away.
We are giving them away. Yesterday's question and answer was, this pitcher was selected in the Rule 5 draft in 2015 by the Blue Jays and enjoyed a few seasons in Toronto before being dealt to the Astros in 2019. Mean to him. Yeah, because
I'm sure you said some really mean thing to him, too.
The answer was Joe Biagini.
Yeah.
That's just, he tried too hard to be original. Like, seriously.
Yeah, you can't try to. That's a fair point.
No,
come on. That's fair. I said it's fair.
I mean, yeah.
I agreed with you first time all year.
He got a little carried away with the Biagini-ness of himself. Today's question is to win tickets to see the Jays and Astros at Rogers Center on Wednesday. That's my opinion. Other people
That's a solid opinion.
On Wednesday, July 3rd. This position player spent a brief time with the Astros in 2012 and has played for every single team in the AL East. I've got something else to tell you, but if I did that, it would make the question way too easy. So I'm going to do a little editing. His career highlight occurred with the Boston Red Sox. See what I did? So again, this position player spent a brief time with the Astros in 2012 and has played for every single team in the AL East. But his career highlight came with the Boston Red Sox. Yeah, that's how you make it a little tougher. Text the answer to 590-590 for your shot to win, yada, yada, yada. See rules at sportsnet.ca/590. Jeff Passan's next. It's Blair and Barker on Sportsnet 590, The Fan, and Sportsnet. Needed that water. Welcome back to Blair and Barker.
Sportsnet
590, The Fan.
Hey.
I got to make sure I stay hydrated. Very important out there when it's hot.
It ain't hot today, is it?
No, it's not.
No.
It's nice today. it's nice to. Well, I mean, it could be a little hotter and more humid. You know me, I like it like 130 degrees with 150% humidity.
Good for you.
Yeah, I don't.
You're an odd human.
Hmm?
You're an odd human.
I live in Canada, man. I don't.
What's that got to do with it? You don't like air conditioner because you live in Canada?
I like really hot weather. Like really
That's the
hot.
dumbest thing. You've said some dumb things. That's like way up there with like top
Smoking hot
5,
weather.
top 4.
It's definitely not a top 5
top
or
4,
top 4 thing.
top
Trust
4.
me.
I live in Canada. That's why we love 130 degree weather.
It's going to be 130 everywhere in about 10 more years.
Okay.
So. 7:07 will be the first pitch tonight at the Rogers Center. The Jays playing the first of 4 games against the New York Yankees. Carlos Rodon on the mound for the Yankees against Jose Barrios of the Blue Jays. And the rest of the pitching matchups, Stroman, Kikuchi, Cortez, Bassett, and Garrett Cole still scheduled to start Sunday.
Why is that surprising?
Against Kevin Gausman. I'm just wondering. You never know. You never know what they may or may not do at this point in time. Let's bring in Jeff Passan, ESPN's MLB insider.
He's my favorite Jeff.
Understandably.
Understandably.
Oh boy, we've had a heck of a day.
Have you noticed the distinct lack of Jeffs ages 21 and younger?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a dead name, Blair. Like we're the keepers of the name, and we have to stand strong by it, so that there's ultimately a new generation of Jeffs to come along.
You two are so bad.
We don't want to be a dying breed.
You two are so bad you ruined the name Jeff. That's what you're saying, Jeff.
No, Jeffs with G are the ones who ruin the name.
Yeah,
like Jeff Jenkins.
Jeff
Jenkins.
The Jeffrey Chaucer, the fake English.
Yeah, he used to yell at me all the time.
Screwed it up for all of us.
Although don't forget, my name is really William. It's William Jeffrey Blair. So and William.
True.
The last time I looked, Williams doing okay, but it's all cyclical, and it's all cyclical.
Isn't it a Southern thing to go with your middle name, not a Canadian thing?
Every male in my dad's side of the family was William something. It's just a thing. Just a
okay.
thing.
So you're one of those families.
Yeah. It's like, I'll get to, but when BJ Ryan was here, I think I told you this story, Barker. BJ Ryan was here. I asked him, so one day, what did the initials stand for? He said, Bo Jr. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah, it's a real redneck thing. I thought, okay. As only BJ Ryan would say. So you put together your top additions for contenders at the trade deadline. I see no Blue Jays here, unless I'm misreading it. I see no Blue Jays. What? And then Bo, I don't know if Bo Bichette just told Hazel May about half an hour ago that, frankly, he would not be surprised if he's traded at the deadline, basically, to paraphrase him, which, but yeah, it's, is that just a sign? Is that an indication on your part that you think the Jays are still, like, we may know where they have to go. The industry may have an idea where they have to go, but right now they're still looking for an excuse to continue on this path.
100%. They see what the Astros have done. They see what the Mets have done. They see the American League playoff landscape where Kansas City's falling back some, and a Boston team that the Blue Jays could legitimately sit there and say, we have more talent than this team, and they're the third wild card right now. Why not us? And the answers, of course, are manifold, but I don't think you're going to get a whole lot more dealing Bo Bichette right now than you would on July 29th or July 30th, right? So I think the Jays are just trying to buy themselves some time, and we've been saying that for, upward of a month at this point, and they go out and lose 7 straight games, and it's like, okay, what are you waiting for? But we're getting close to that point, I think, where they're going to have to really start talking with other teams and seeing what their deadline could look like. And then it's not a matter of, are the Jays going to sell? It's more, who are they going to sell? Is it going to be Kikuchi and Bassett, or is it going to be more like Kikuchi and Bassett and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette?
Yeah, you mentioned Chris Bassett, and the more I thought about, we had Chris Bassett on yesterday, and the more I was kind of thinking about him, and Chris Bassett would be a fascinating ad, especially for a National League team that may not have seen him a lot. A guy throws 8 pitches. He'd be a great guy to drop in a team in the middle of a series, wouldn't he? Here, good luck figuring out what this guy's going to throw.
Chris Bassett's just a really good big league pitcher. Like, it's as simple as that. He is not going to win a Cy Young. He is also not going to win a Cy Yuck. Like, that you are going to get good, above average pitching 80% of the time when he's on the mound. And imagine having a guy like that in the middle of a rotation for a playoff team. That's what the Blue Jays thought they were getting, right? Yeah. That's why they went out and gave him what they did. And he has, I think what you can say about Chris Bassett is he's been everything that the Blue Jays were hoping he would be.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And then some.
You can reasonably look at him and say, this guy is going to be a solid part of my rotation, because, guys, we're going on to the 7th year now where he's been part of a rotation and has had an ERA of 3.8 or lower.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, it's a good pitcher.
Yes.
It's every single year you look at his ERA plus, and I know he didn't have a full year in 2018, but starting there, 138, which means he's park adjusted 38% better than the average pitcher. 113, 183 in the COVID year, 131, 113, 118. This year he's 114. Like, he's just a good pitcher, and he signed at $20 million a year for a very reasonable price for another season.
Jeff, which team in the American League East makes the biggest splash?
Oh boy,
adding or selling?
Either. Biggest splash.
Oh.
Dump back the Brinks truck up, or it could be the Blue Jays, it could be the Rays, it could be the Yankees now that they've lost 8 out of 10. Could be the Orioles.
Yeah,
it could be any of that. It could be the Red Sox.
A week ago, Kevin, I probably would have said the Orioles like a snap answer.
Yeah.
After what the Yankees have done lately, I wonder just how far this is going to go, because now you've got Anthony Rizzo on the injured list, and now you've got Garrett Cole with questions, and Luis Gil has gotten knocked around twice in his last 2 starts now. And all these things that over the first 60 games of the season were just not a consideration for the Yankees have manifested themselves pretty clearly over the last 20. And this does not look like an indomitable team at this point. While I do think that the Orioles' need for another frontline type starter is probably more acute than anything that the Yankees don't have right now, are we running into something similar to last season? Remember when Aaron Judge was just absolutely carrying that team by himself? Mm-hmm. Well, it's a lot easier when you have Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, and Aaron Judge was keeping them around a 500 team. So, you would think that Soto would keep them slightly above, and the cushion that they built at the beginning of the season is going to behoove them. But they're not this team that you look at it and you're like, whoa, they really don't have any weaknesses. No, their infield right now really can't hit. Their bullpen depth particularly is lacking, and their starting pitching, even with Garrett Cole back, if his stuff is down and if Gil is, running out of steam here, then all of a sudden that strength of theirs isn't quite the same. So it's not in the Yankees' DNA to make a big trade deadline splash. They haven't done so in a long time now, and I don't know that they're going to do it this year. But, we're getting to the point where the question is no longer is it just the Orioles by themselves in terms of needing to do something. It feels like Orioles and Yankees now are right around the same.
To me, the 2 teams that I find really, really fascinating are the Cleveland Guardians, and we've seen them a lot recently. I love watching the Guardians play. I enjoy their brand of baseball. but also Milwaukee. And, when I think of Chris Bassett, I think of a Milwaukee being a good fit for him, but you also have a match.
That's spot on.
But you have a match with, I'd forgotten how good this guy has become. I read this and I looked at his numbers. What the hell's happened to Jack Flaherty? Like, where did that come from?
Do you remember Jack Flaherty in the second half in 2018 when he was the best pitcher in the world? Like, he has rediscovered that stuff, and especially that command.
Really?
And the stuff's always been there. And Detroit, under AJ Hinch and Chris Fetter, like they have a good pitching program there. And I think Jack Flaherty at the deadline last year, he wasn't quite an afterthought, but Baltimore got him for Cesar Prieto, who's wasn't even in their top 20 prospects, and in an organization with an okay farm system probably would have been right around 10 or so. So it was, it's a guy who's probably going to be a big leaguer at some point, but not definitely by any means. This year, Jack Flaherty should get an absolute haul for Detroit because you can make an argument based on his production this year. He's been every bit as good as Garrett Crochet. Like, he's right up there with him in terms of strikeouts.
He's also only 28. For some reason, I thought Jack Flaherty was 32 or 33, which I have no idea why.
Jack Flaherty is going to get paid this winter.
Yeah.
He's a free agent going into this offseason. And, we thought it was going to be last year for him, but the performance in recent years has just been so spotty. And, there were some questions about how he would fit into clubhouses. He's been great in Detroit this year, and it's a good spot for him. And I don't know that an extension is going to happen necessarily, but Detroit certainly got to be thinking about it at this point.
Yeah, I think the question you got to ask yourself, you're the Guardians of the Brewers, can they go on the road and beat the behemoths in the National League and the American League? You got to be real, right? I mean, do you think the Guardians can go to Yankee Stadium, and even if they were playing this Yankees team, that I think is the no, I don't.
I think
I know they got the pin that they got, but man alive, like you're asking sort of that small ball, other than two people in the Guardians lineup to work through however many games in Yankee Stadium. It'd be hard. Track record say no.
I think you're thinking of the 2010 through 23 Guardians and not the 2024 Guardians because. When you're saying two people, do you mean Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor or Jose Ramirez and Stephen Kwan?
Well, I mean, who puts more fear into your soul if you're a visiting team, say the Yankees? I mean, it's probably not Kwan, right?
The answer is Josh Naylor, but Stephen Kwan as a pitcher horrifies me because he doesn't swing and miss, man.
Maybe
he's had 235 or so plate appearances this year and struck out 16 times. So I know that the ball is going in play. He's American League Luis Arraez with more power. Like he can put a real charge into the ball. I think you're forgetting about David Fry.
Maybe.
And understandably so because David Fry's never been a guy up until this year. But he's OPSing nearly 950, and I don't know who else. In that lineup, those are four guys. I don't know who else is going to step up, but at times this year it's been Andres Jimenez. At times this year it's been Will Brennan. Kyle Manzardo. I know the numbers aren't great right now, but he's got a chance. Daniel Schneeman's been phenomenal since he's come up and has taken a spot in their lineup. John Kenzie Noel started, in his big league debut, first at bat, hit a ball 430 feet to center field. Like they need another bat. I agree with you on that. They need another bat, but the offense this year, just scoring wise, has been every bit as good as the elite teams in the American League. I mean, you see them and you think their lineup pales compared to the Orioles or the Yankees. The Orioles have scored 417 runs, the Yankees 408. The Guardians are third in the American League with 394 runs scored. This is not a bad offense, and they're first in all of the American League when it comes to runs allowed. And the only team that's allowed fewer runs than them this year is Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, you made a good argument. They can shorten the game. It's like a high school game with them because of the bullpen they have, and they can hit the ball the other way.
It's
Jeff,
Dude, the bullpen's just so good.
Well, you wrote that article about the pitches, right? They can take the pitcher's best pitch and hit it the other way. So I'll give you that. But again, I played in Yankee Stadium. It ain't the easiest thing to do, I'm assuming, in October, and we've seen how that goes. But I'll believe it when I sort of see it. They're a good team, I think, right?
Staying in New York, the Mets. Did this series change anything in your mind for the Mets?
I think this series, at very least, makes them not just this series, but really like the last 3 weeks. They've won 15 of their last 19 games. Mm-hmm. They were 11 under 500 at one point. They are currently at 500. They have a positive run differential. Some of their younger guys, like Mark Vientos, have really gotten going, and Francisco Lindor is playing awfully well. I don't think at the end of the day that the Mets are a playoff team. I also don't think that this is a team that at this point can sell. Like when you're at 500, you're a game and a half back of the wild card. It's not a reasonable thing, particularly in a place like New York, to go out and do that. Even if it's right, even if it's for the future, even if it's pragmatic, there are points at which pragmatism needs to fly out the window. And that is the year after a 90-win team and an 86-win team face off in the World Series.
Jeff, we're 81 games through this thing. Give me a like and a dislike throughout this far through the season. Could be anything. Could be a team. Could be a player. Could be you don't like the sticky stuff. Could be what Major League Baseball has done. Could be the Blue Jays are a disappointment. Could be anything that you're thinking. A like and a dislike 81 games through.
Really like the Philadelphia Phillies, man. I like that Alec Boehm has taken a step forward. I like that Bryce Harper is having an MVP-type season that nobody seems to be talking about. I like a rotation that has Zach Wheeler at the top with Ranger Suarez, Aaron Nola, and Christopher Sanchez behind them. I like a bullpen where you can go righty-lefty with Jeff Hoffman and Matt Strahm, and you can match up with velocity, with spin. They've got it all. I think the Phillies are a complete team, and if they can go out and get Luis Robert at the trade deadline to play center field, I think they are the World Series favorite. Dislike?
Yeah.
I dislike the state of offense in Major League Baseball right now. I think that part of it certainly is a consequence of just how good pitching has gotten and how much better pitching training is than hitting training. And I think that's going to even out at some point, but we're at a moment right now where the league-wide OPS, and I've been saying this on the show for months now, and it hasn't gotten a whole lot better. The league-wide OPS, I believe, is 704 right now. Guys are not getting on base. Guys are not hitting for the power that they did in the past. And when they do hit for power, it's just for home runs. They're not playing gap-to-gap. They're not, shooting triples down the line. It's not a binary game where it's, just strikeouts or everything else, because the strikeout rate's actually down a little bit, but guys just aren't hitting the ball the way that they used to. And when you have the pitching that you do, when you have the defensive pitching positioning that you do, there needs to be more than just the home run ball. And I don't think that's being taught at lower levels particularly, but it's not being emphasized either at the highest level. And it makes me appreciate guys like Steve McQuan and Luis Ariz who, they make their living off of singles. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Jeff, really good of you to do this as always, my friend. Be well.
That's why you're my favorite Jeff.
I appreciate that, Kevin. You are not my favorite, Kevin, but that's okay.
I'll take it.
See you, man. Be
top
well.
5.
Top 5? You put yourself in the top 5.
Sure. Why not? How many Kevins you know?
I know a lot of Kevins.
That's a lie. Well, name them. Name 4 of them.
I mean,
you're making them up. No.
Well,
you could call them, ask them to come over, have a drinky drink with you. Still waiting for that, by the way.
What?
Well, the better cigar than you gave me last time.
That cigar.
I mean, that thing. First of all, I'm a grown man, Jeff. I remember that.
Those were Toscana Garibaldi Italian cigars. They are tremendous.
You can say it any
way
you
tremendous.
want.
See, the problem is, though, with you and cigars, you smoke cigars like a lot of people smoke a joint.
Oh, boy.
You're not supposed to, like that, suck the whole thing in like 2 minutes. You're supposed to savor it. And that's a problem. But those cigars I gave you were fine.
Cigar,
fine.
not cigars.
Cigar was
You're
fine.
too cheap to give me more than one. I mean, it's true. And you even said it's so long, cut it in half.
Well, yeah, that's the thing that they do. That's what they do in Italy. It's
I'm not in Italy.
I mean, you're just such a. Sometimes you're such an American,
yeah.
and you just
yeah. Well, the first thing somebody nicely gives you a cigar, and you say, "Oh, by the way, you can cut that in half." Yeah, or a grown man, Jeff. Don't cut no cigars in half. What are you talking?
Passan.
I know he said it. What did he say?
Jeffrey's texts are always.
I love it. He's tremendous.
Are always good. Always good. What's your? That was a good question you asked. What's your positive takeaway at this point in the season, and your negative takeaway?
I think the inability to buy into in-game, in-and-at bat adjustment throughout baseball. They just don't do it. They're buying into one kind of swing. I'm going to take 3 big daddy hacks. You strike me out, it's fine. You walk me, it's fine. I got 3 big ones. I'm going to take all 3 of them. And then you see, like Jeff mentioned, the Guardians come in, and they're taking Jose Barrios' best backdoor two-seamer and hitting a backspin homer from a lefty to left field. That, I think, is one of them. And I just think baseball is in – I mean, I'm just not sure about the 3 wild card spots. We are praising some really bad teams for being mediocre.
I will
that fighting for 500. I mean, come on, man!
Yeah.
It is just like, and how easy of a job would it be being a GM of those teams?
I mean,
fighting for.
I mean, I know a guy you can call and ask.
For fighting.
What a way to end the show, man! You walked right into that with your hip waders on. For me,
so that's what I got.
For me, I'll
never speak again.
Yeah, thank you. For me, what I really like is I'm completely in the Paul Skeens bandwagon, man. I just think it's so much fun watching him pitch. I go out of my way to watch the Pittsburgh Pirates when he's pitching.
Skeens Day.
I just think he's a hoot. I like the personality. I like everything about him. I'm just, every time he throws a pitch, I'm just got my fingers crossed.
Please don't get hurt. Please don't get hurt. Please don't get hurt.
But that to me has been, I'm with Jeff. I'd like to see the game become a little more offensive, but I've become a really big fan of Paul Skeens. To me, it's just a show.
Yeah.
He's a one-man show.
Yeah.
And as far as disliking, I'm kind of with you. I'm getting to wonder about the wild card. I'm getting to wonder about it.
Fan bases are happy to see it, but man, there's some bad teams fighting for that 3rd spot.
I also, I'm getting to wonder about that. That's it for us. We'll be doing Blue Jays talk following the game tonight. 7:07 first pitch. We'll be back tomorrow from 4 to 6 Eastern on Sportsnet 590. The Fan at Sportsnet. Fan pre-games next. Take care, everybody.